Happy Tuesday, everybody. You're back in the building on the ClaireMont Show. I'm Lamont.
I'm Claire.
And we're bringing you an action-packed show today. Things we're going to cover today. Yes, there was someone who gave birth at 5 years old. Not only do we have the visual proof, but we've got studies to back it up. Claire's going to drop all the knowledge on you guys in that regard. We've also got issues with young men, and I'm starting to hear some women getting addicted to porn early in life, which just brings the need for better sex education. We're going to break that down. And then we're going to break down something that kind of coalesces around the whole issue. Women need better health, and that fucking Charlie Kirk and others in his camp telling women that the best aspiration they can have in life is to be a mother. Claire, are you ready to do this?
Let's dive in, please.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, the ClaireMont Show. We start right now.
I'm up early for the dealers come out. Everybody is outside till the killers come out. You ain't eating, you just act full. I'm impactful. Dozen funerals in a month. I got that full. I will give it to niggas in all rap forms. Ignatius out right now on all platforms.
What's up, everybody? I'm Lamont. That's Claire. And Claire, we've got to find a different theme song because that one's just too much me. It doesn't have any you in it. So audience and Claire, think of a song that can mash us together. You know, think of something that's fun and hip that can mash us together. Unless Claire likes that one, we'll come up with something else.
I'm honestly, you know me, I'm a chiller, whatever works. But if y'all do have recommendations, definitely give them.
Let us know. And you guys can let us know in the comment section, or you can call our little hotline for free. Link is in description. Check us out. Be sure to subscribe and show all your friends our show. We also have the podcast link. It is right there. Pretty much everywhere you go, you can find us. TikTok, YouTube, podcast, The ClaireMont Show. And then we also have individual channels. You can find her at Claire B. Pronounce that for me, Claire.
It's CLURBAME. So it's ClaireBame.
ClaireBame.
Yeah, ClaireBame. My last name is not spelled BAME, but it's pronounced BAME.
Okay, gotcha.
So I made that as a joke because it's like a phonetic spelling of my name. And then here we are. Just still go. But yeah, so ClaireBame is my TikTok.
So find her on TikTok, and you can find me on TikTok as Lamont Tyson or Politics of Being Black. And I just started the fresh YouTube channel, so go over there and check it out. As we always do to break the ice, Claire, it is time for one of our favorite segments, the We've Had It, our homage, our thank you for giving such great material to the women over at the I've Had It podcast. This is how we celebrate the good things you all are doing to inspire people. Let's kick that off, Claire. Let us play our music for this. What have you had it with, Claire?
So this is kind of echoing a lot of my other I've had it, but I've had it with people pretending that they can disengage from politics or that they can be apolitical. Okay. When I say to people, I don't even know how to phrase it. I'm into politics or I follow politics. It's it feels like all of us should say that and be there. But to me, it's always just such a sign of privilege when I talk to people oh, I'm very impassioned about what's going on politically. And they're like, oh, I don't really know. I mean, I don't really follow politics. I'm like, oh, so either they don't affect you or they do affect you and you don't care. Everything is political. And it bothers me so much, especially because where we live in the South, a lot of people love to do that. Just to honestly, almost sit on the fence and play a little bit around with social dynamics, I think, because to me, it's you want the Republicans to like you want the Democrats to like you. And so you just say, I'm apolitical, or I just don't engage in politics. I'm not into politics. And that to me is almost worse than being a full-blown Trumper, because you're just a bystander. You're just kind of there. You're not voting for anyone. You're not making progress or pulling back from progress. So I mean, it happens all the time for me. And I never know how to respond when I talk to people about, like, hey, I do this show and a lot of our commentary is political. And a lot of times people just be like, oh, that's cool. Like, I just don't really follow politics. And I'm just like, really? Like, nothing? Like, you don't even recognize that little things like the clothes you put on, the car you drive, like all of that is political. Like, everything is political, especially in this day and age. So I've just had it with that. Like, the whole, I'd rather just sit back and watch everyone else argue about it. Like, use your power and dive in and recognize that everything affects you. Even if you're the most privileged person in the world, politics affects everyone.
Well said. I agree with that, ladies and gentlemen, but I'll take it a step further than what she said. Usually everyone who says to me, I don't like politics, they vote fucking Republican because they're too scared to admit that they believe in the social policies of Democrats, but inherently want the so-called fiscal policies of Republicans, when that in itself is a lie that they need to further examine anyway. Right. But I can understand people want to have an escape every now and then from politics. I get that, especially when you've got the type of president in office that his motto is just blitz them with bad shit. We're just going to blitz you to the point where you don't want to participate. And ladies and gentlemen, those who don't have your best interests, they do not want you to participate. And when you start saying ill, yucky politics, or I don't like politics, it makes me think either you don't care how you get treated in your society, or you vote Republican and you're too afraid to say that you like the social issues of the Democrats, but you don't want to debate why your fiscal quote unquote responsibility outweighs the social contract. And you don't want to debate, you don't want to think, you don't want to use your damn mind. So you say, I don't like politics. But every single thing in your life, from the house you walk in to the way you have sex with your woman in some states, because in my state, hitting it from the back is illegal, technically. But I mean, yeah, who's going to prove it? Who's going to prove it? You know? Yeah, we're in the Bible Belt, ladies and gentlemen, where they only want you to have missionary, okay? So yeah, policy affects everything, and you need to get
Dude, the knowledge you just dropped, like, so casually.
I mean, it is what it is. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, get involved in politics.
Yeah,
this is our we've had it segment. If you want to voicemail us in things you've had it with, let us know. My I've had it, Claire, is similar to yours in terms of it's political today, but it's a little different. So I dropped a video yesterday talking about how Israel just puppet mastered Trump, hook, line, and sinker into doing something they've wanted. Benjamin Netanyahu has been wanting presidents to do for 35 years. He's been wanting someone to aid him in dropping bombs on Iran, and Trump bit the bait like a bass that wants to be on somebody's trophy, okay? I've had it with people who are not properly informed, getting on people's comment section, acting as if they are informed and intelligent by telling you, oh, well, Hillary said she would do the same thing, or Barack Obama said he'd do the same thing, or Biden said he'd do the same thing. Kamala said she'd do the same thing. None of them are in office. And if you're speaking on Obama, he put a ceasefire in place that stayed in place until y'all's president took his ass back in office this year. And he removed it because Trump has a complete hard-on for Obama because he cannot understand why this man is so beloved. How about you put policies in place that bring people together and help the greater majority of people in the country instead of the few that are rich, instead of the corporations that want to control people, and instead of taking folks' health care, you'd be better off. But back to the people I'm talking about. You MAGA people, can you do something to get your info better? Because switching to whataboutism, which is what you did when you start trying to tell me Hillary did it, Kamala said it, or Biden said it, Obama said it. Biden didn't bomb nobody, not Iran anyway. And he's not the president right now. So what you did was you got your ass caught by the balls and you wanted to start screaming whataboutism, and you did it on my comment section, of which we have none of that. Claire, what do you think? Am I wrong? Or is this a horrible I've had?
And it's the same bitches on both of our comment sections. I'm over it. The quote that I've been leaning into, especially since we started this show, is I can explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you. Like you and I, we can lay out an argument or even just a point or a fact on a silver fucking platter. And the same dumb idiots are going to go, that's not food. What is that? No. This is what you need. This is your sustenance. Take it. You look like you're starving for some truth. And they're like, that looks fake. That's not Will. I don't want it. Like, oh my God. I don't know how many other ways I can explain this to you. You wouldn't get the point if it punched you across the face. So yes. Oh God, every word you're saying. I mean, I had a guy on my TikTok yesterday and it was so funny because the comments he was saying were like, clearly you're an angry feminazi or whatever he wanted to say. So he's coming at me and like, like my emotions. Yet he commented on, I want to say 10 of my videos. He commented all of them about like you're going to die alone and no man wants a woman like you. And you're the problem with dating in the modern world. And you're the problem with modern women. And I'm like, good. Because men like you, I hope that I scare you or I anger you so that you get the fuck away from me. So yeah, I'm over it. We're getting the same types of people. They're saying different things. But they're both trying to come at us with low blows. And it's like, if you wanted to have a high level intellectual conversation, you would be having it. But instead, you're just doing whataboutism. You're talking about dumb things like how I look or how old I am, like that have nothing to do really with the point I'm making. So to me, that shows that we've already won the conversation because they're forfeiting. Yeah. Anyway, yes, 100%. With you.
And for us, we're going to do a long video, ladies and gentlemen, one day on what it takes to get through to someone who's in a delusion, because Trump people are clearly in a delusion. And the 3 tantamount of dealing with people who are in delusion, number one, you can't fact bomb them. So out the gate, Democrats are in a deficit because you can't overload them with facts because it makes them hunker down to their delusion even more. Because I can remember when I was a child and I learned Santa Claus wasn't real, I hunkered down for a long time. I can remember when I was a child and I found out that WWE wrestling was WWE wrestling. Man, I fought that tooth and nail forever. The other thing you can't do with them, ladies and gentlemen, when you engage them in debate, ladies and gentlemen, you have to ask them questions to get them to the corner where you want them to be. And then lastly, you have to give them an eloquent story, because the fact that they're in the delusion means that they got stuck there because someone sold them an eloquent story to get them in the delusion. But y'all let us know what you think. We'll do that long video one day later on so that y'all can talk to y'all uncles and your granddads that stuck in MAGA. Maybe this will help, but we'll get to what we've got to cover today. Yeah. Leave us comments. Leave us voicemails. Let us know what you think.
Awesome. All right. And so today is going to be a bit more Claire-centric. And we're going to have Lamont reacting, which is kind of fun because I feel like usually it's a balance or Lamont's bringing some heat. So this is going to be more a video on my specialty, or at least my niche interests. But we're going to go a little bit into, so my background's in psychology. I'm getting my master's in counseling. But I also did a lot of work undergrad when I was getting my master's. Getting my undergrad in psychology in epigenetics, psychopharmacology. So not just behavior, but also what's going on in the brain and in the body that produces these behaviors. What are the chemicals that are being produced and things like that. So this all started, Lamont, where did we even start this conversation? I think we were just talking about like how did we get on? We were talking about how we both went to middle schools where they were pregnant 7th or 8th graders.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just kind of talking about how fascinating that is, and how if you don't grow up in an area or in like a school district where that's a thing, that sounds insane. But we both were like, oh yeah, like, and they always have a boyfriend who's 19 or 20.
So do you remember how we initially even started that conversation? Because two Republican politicians got fucking caught. One sex trafficking girls, the other one had over 200 hours of
Child
pornographic underage material, and his ass won an award from that mother's group, Moms for Liberty. He won the award, and that's what sparked a further conversation into where the bull jobs come from. And guess what I got for you, Claire? When you're done introing what you're going to discuss, I got a video for you that breaks it all down. Pregnancy through you know what, but you throw the alley-oop to the audience first before we go there.
Yeah, so we're going to discuss a real person named Lina Medina.
Mm-hmm.
She was born in Peru in September of 1933. And at just 5 years, 7 months, and 21 days old, Lina gave birth to a healthy baby boy via cesarean section. She is the youngest known person in medical history to give birth. And so we're going to go into how is this even possible? B, what does this mean when we expand it and we look at other cases that involve sexual abuse, that involve young pregnancies, that involve children having to become women because of the horrible things that have been done to them? And then we're also going to lean into how does this play into larger trends between different neighborhoods, potentially different ethnic groups, however you want to look at it. And what does early development and early exposure to certain things create in the long run? So mostly talking about things like violence, things like exposure to porn, exposure to sexual abuse. And then how does that create bigger problems later? And then we're also going to tie it a little bit in with reproductive health care, of course, and also with the fact that so many Republicans, A, are freaking creeps, and B, also think that they should have control of the very women that they are degrading. We've got frontrunner number one right here, who doesn't give a flying shit if his daughter had to give birth at 10 years old. He, in fact, has said in videos that he would, my daughter would give birth in that case. He's literally admitted that if his daughter got pregnant at like 10 or 11 years old, he would not want an abortion for her. So that tells you what kind of fucking people these are. And then, we're just kind of also going to tie in some of our own personal experiences and how we've seen the evidence and the biology that I'm about to talk about play out in our own lives.
All right. Way to go. So ladies and gentlemen, buckle on up. We're going to discuss a subject that everybody's thinking about, but nobody really wants to talk about it online, which is sex and how it deals with lots of different systemic things. But the most important part we're going to break down is Lina, who did have a child, ladies and gentlemen. She gave birth at 5 years old. Amazing story. Sit back, get your popcorn, get you some tissue in case you're going to cry. For those of y'all that bought my tissue paper shades, now is the perfect time to go get them. Here we go.
This is the story of the youngest mom in history. In 1939, a couple from a remote village in Peru became concerned when they noticed that their 5-year-old daughter's stomach was growing. This little girl was named Lina Medina, and she was the youngest of 9 siblings. At first, Lina's parents believed that an evil spirit had possessed her body. Concerned for her health, her mother, Victoria Lucia, took her to seek medical help at a hospital in Lima. When the doctor first saw the child, he suspected that she had a huge tumor in her abdomen, but after a series of tests, his findings revealed the unimaginable truth. 5-year-old Lina was 7 months pregnant. The situation became even more dramatic when on May 14, 1939, Lina underwent a life-threatening C-section, giving birth to a healthy baby boy, Gerardo. He was named after the doctor who treated her, Dr. Gerardo Lozada. Lina became the youngest mother in the world at only 5 years old. The authorities in Peru launched an investigation into the case. They suspected that Lina had been the victim of abuse and arrested her father, Lina Medina. He vehemently denied his involvement and was released after no evidence could be found against him. No one else was ever charged with the crime. There has been a great deal of speculation and curiosity around the case, not only about the identity of the father, but also about how a prepubescent girl could have gotten pregnant. Experts in the field state that it's possible for children with a rare genetic condition called precocious puberty to experience changes in their body that normally only happen in adults. Precocious puberty is characterized by the early onset of puberty, typically before age 8 for girls and before age 9 for boys. Lina's case was documented in a medical journal revealing that she had her first period at just 8 months old, but this still doesn't explain everything. Someone had to get Lina pregnant. She never revealed who it was, and given her young age, she might not have even known herself. After giving birth, Lina and her family struggled to cope with the attention and stigma surrounding her pregnancy. Many media outlets offered money in exchange for an interview, including an American film company that wanted to document her story, but the family refused. 2 years after Gerardo was born, Lina was assessed by a child specialist. He described her as bright and intelligent and said that she thinks of the child as a baby brother. Lina's son was raised by her parents and was told that Lina was his sister. He only learned the truth at the age of 10 when Lina was 15. Lina herself grew up and began working as a secretary at Dr. Lozada's clinic. Dr. Lozada not only provided her with a job and education, but also supported her son's education through high school. As an adult, Lina got married and gave birth to a second child. This time, she was in her 30s. At 89 years old, she is still alive today. Sadly, she outlived her son Gerardo, who died at age 40 from a disease. To this day, the identity of the father remains a mystery.
Wow. Can you guys believe that? Post your comments, leave us a voicemail. The floor belongs to Claire because this is what she went to school for, to break down these type of things and what they can do traumatically to the brain. I'm ready to learn. Claire, teach me something I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. So precocious puberty in the case of Lina, they say the cause is often idiopathic, which means there's no specific reason that can be identified for why she got a period at 8 months old or why her organs developed as they did. All that to say, she had this is so hard for us to even fathom, but it's truth, it's reality, and it happens. So we have to talk about it. But she had fully developed breasts and reproductive organs by age 4. So a lot of people are just going to say this is a medical anomaly, which it is. It is extremely rare. But what a lot of people forget about in this is not only did she have this weird kind of spontaneous puberty that was years ahead of when it should have been, and we can't really identify why, but there was a man somewhere near her that had access to her enough to have her alone with him to rape her and impregnate her. And then the psychological trauma of this, and honestly, in a weird way, her young age probably protected her more than anything. I mean, at 5, you do have a lot of memories, but had she been, I know this sounds so bad, 8 or 9, she probably would have remembered even more, and it might have been even worse psychologically in terms of the memories of it. That being said, a 5-year-old body is it's not built to carry a child. A 10-year-old body is not built to carry a child. A 12-year-old body is not built to carry a child. So what does that mean? Like they said in the video, emergency C-sections have to happen in these cases. And we should not overlook the fact that the word there is emergency. So all that to say, this is an extreme case, but girls who are 11, 12, 13 do get pregnant way more often than a lot of people realize or would like to realize in the US and worldwide. And this is a slightly more extreme example of it, but it's still not good for their body, not good for their psychology. It is, I mean, the fact that she was able to have a somewhat normal life after this is another anomaly. It's another thing that we should be looking at as unreal. The fact that she survived the pregnancy at all, miraculous. And so this is actually, as sad as this case is, she's lucky. And it's sad how much worse it could have been when we really think about it. The damage it could have done to her body. The fact that she was able to have another child in her 30s is insane medically. So all of that to say, a lot of people wonder if this precocious puberty, this early puberty, could have been caused by sexual abuse, caused by the abuse, right? Because it's no doubt that she was abused, but it's kind of a chicken and the egg thing. Could sexual abuse produce early puberty? So I looked into that a little bit. In girls, they have found that puberty can be expedited if girls are exposed to sexual imagery, sexual touching, sexual behavior. But it's not usually correlated with years of earlier puberty. It's usually about, they found in a big meta-analysis that it was about 9 months earlier. So they studied a lot of girls who had been admitted to a shelter for abuse. And they were all, I think, in the 9 to like 12 year range.
To help out, I think that some people, just so people are not misled, she's not saying that this happens. She is not saying that children can be molested and touched on, which is horrible anyway, at age 3, 4, and 5, and is going to cause this. She's saying that the disorder that created the situation for this Lina was why she was able to have it. But what Claire is saying is that when you have people molesting and touching girls early as they begin to get into the age of 9, 10, where puberty would normally start, it can escalate it because of the stress and the environments put on the body. Is that
exactly? That's exactly what I'm getting at. So like, we cannot say that the abuse caused early puberty in Lina's case, but we can say that in a lot of other cases where girls are closer to that normal age of puberty, that exposure to sexuality can expedite it by a year, or on average, they found 9 months, at least 9 months earlier for girls who had been abused versus girls in very similar neighborhoods, very similar circumstances who had not been abused. So what that tells us evolutionarily and biologically is that the body is adaptive. And it's sad that it happens that way. But what scientists find as the common explanation for why would a girl go through puberty that much earlier if she's being exposed to sexuality? And it's probably because our bodies have evolved to survive and to reproduce. So if someone who is under the age of puberty is being touched, the body might interpret that. And this is speculation, but a lot of scientists believe that the body might interpret that as, wow, there are no other fully developed women in this tribe or in this community. And now my body needs to go through puberty so that we can survive the species. So that's a scary thought to begin with. But they have found not only in girls that early puberty can be kind of triggered by the environment. They've also found it in boys in a different way. But going back to Lina, I want to make it very clear that we can't tie sexual abuse to her early puberty. That being said, if girls go through this early puberty like Lina did, it shows us what can happen when women and girls aren't protected and when they don't have reproductive freedoms, because it is my firm opinion that any woman who needs an abortion should be able to get one, but especially a child. That brings a host of new issues. And so the Lina Medina case, the fact that so many people don't know about it, tells me everything I need to know about the way that we see healthcare, women's healthcare in this country. And I did this with Lamont, I like to preface this story by asking people, what do you think the youngest person to ever give birth was? And most people say, I don't know, 8, 7 or 8. And I'm like, no, 5 years old. And you can always see it in their face. What? because it doesn't feel possible. But it's a testament to and this is so sad, the strength of the human body. The fact that she was able to recover from this is amazing. But B, why did she ever have to go through it in the first place? You know? And then we're not even going into the psychological stuff, and she stayed very private. I mean, a case study that I would love to tap into would be her life. And in this case, it's all boarded up, and we just have to respect that. But cases like these, you can't recreate them in a factory, in a lab setting, because it's so unethical. But when it happens in real life, scientists are so baffled because it feels like something that can't exist, that can't be real. But it's just it's a really powerful reminder to us of the reality of abuse, of sexualization of girls. Because even if she had gone through this puberty early, if there had never been men who wanted to do these kinds of things to young girls, she never would have gone through this entire ordeal. So we really need to be also looking at the men in this equation, the men who are engaging with a child, and the implications that they might not be thinking about, like a 5-year-old getting pregnant. If you're a child predator, you're probably not thinking about any of these things. Obviously, you just don't care at all. But that to say, this case is just so shocking from so many different fronts because it reveals so many uncomfortable truths about the world. And that's why a lot of people probably don't know about it, because it's nasty. It's nasty to even think about, but it's real.
I think it doesn't come up a lot, Claire, because it's not widely known.
Right.
That, like, if I think that this should be something that should probably be on the docket for sex education anywhere it's taught.
Right.
And reason being is because to let people know that, again, Claire is not saying that this girl was molested from the time she got out of her mama's womb.
We don't know.
5, which is what created her puberty star. And she told you that there was a disorder that created that.
Right.
But what she is putting emphasis on is women's health and the need for women's health in the United States, because we do have young women who get molested by men at very, very young, early ages. And when you're about to start puberty, if you're being molested by someone, you can make that puberty speed up a little bit, and then boom, you pregnant.
Right.
And
At 10 or 11.
If you're in a state where you can't get abortion care and you're poor and you can't go anywhere else, you're screwed in essence.
And it can be incest too. I mean, the man who got her pregnant could have been her uncle. It could have been her dad. I mean, they didn't
Someone
find
close to the family, for sure.
But it probably was. In most cases, it is. It is a relative or a neighbor. And so these conversations are so tough, but they're real. And the girls who do experience these things, they're looking to lawmakers, they're looking to the people who are making really big decisions in our world, and they're saying, and what are you doing about this? And the only answers we're getting are, well, women's biggest dream should be to be a mother. Like, what? Like, I mean, obviously, I don't think the Republicans are advocating for like young teen pregnancies or child pregnancies. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that young girls are watching what's happening to older women and the way that women's bodies are looked at. And how would someone like Lina Medina feel knowing that in this day and age, like 90 years after this happened, 85, something like that. We are still having these debates over should a child be able to have an emergency abortion? Why is that even a conversation? And then women too, but especially children, especially young girls, deserve to live in a world where they look forward to motherhood, where they look forward to having choices, where they understand that if there's a complication in a pregnancy, if someone does molest them when they're 11 or 12, that it won't ruin the rest of their life, that it won't leave them traumatized for the rest of their life. And So like, if I want to pivot a little bit, tying this into chronic stress, especially in early life, have you heard of ACEs, Lamont?
Well, the ACEs I've heard of is a after school program that we have here in the region of the Triad, where kids go and get whatever the acronym is, education. But no, whatever you're about to say medically, I haven't heard it. And before you go, I want to make one more comment about
Please.
Medina and young people molesting kids at a young age. Folks, there are several reasons why that happened, and you can call them all evil if you want, and I'm fine with that. But a lot of white nationalists claim they support the Bible. There were plenty of times in that Bible people was having sex with girls who weren't 18 years old. Plenty of times. That leads to, we go back to slavery, another issue that white nationalists and MAGA don't want to talk about. And a lot of the young girls that were nowhere near 18 that were slaves were getting their backs blown the hell out by the slave master, who he was married. He had his old ass blonde haired wife in the house, and then would go out at nighttime after dark, slavery after dark, and get them some of that black booty that was way underage, and would keep these families spitting out babies that were young, and they would go and molest these kids. And so our greater point here is that you have to be extra careful with not just girls. So we're not just saying it as if this is something that happens to women, right, because we know it happens to men too. But the reason why we're putting the focus on the girl is because usually the aftermath in terms of physical and mental, the physical being the baby, the mental being the mental health. Whereas as a man, if you're molested, you're dealing with the mental health. You don't have a baby to be a constant reminder.
The whole rest of your life being impacted by this one moment. You still have to live through that moment psychologically, but the lasting impact, the physical impact of it is different if you are a girl who can become pregnant.
Exactly.
And earlier exposure to sexuality can put that date earlier, which means the more that we are exposing girls and women to sex, and even young boys or anyone else who would be predatory towards young girls, the more younger pregnancies that are unwanted are going to happen. And if we continue going down the route that we are with abortion access and reproductive care, we're going to have that many more teen or young pregnancies that are unwanted and that ruin young girls' futures.
Right.
So
floor is yours, Claire. Floor is back yours.
Yeah, no. So there's a thing called ACEs. They're called, and we talk about this so much in my field, they're called adverse childhood experiences. So they're potentially traumatic events that occur in childhood, so before the age of 18, and they fall into three broad categories: abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. So the abuse can be physical, emotional, sexual. The neglect can be physical or emotional. And then the household dysfunction can be substance abuse, mental illness, domestic violence, incarceration, or parental separation / divorce. So those are the big areas that you're looking in. 61% of adults have experienced at least one adverse childhood experience. So whether it was sexual abuse, whether it was a divorce, and there are some traumatic experiences that are worse than others. But 1 in 6 adults has experienced 4 or more ACEs. Now, so when we say 4 or more, there's 10, right? So think out of 10. When you do like an ACEs quiz, there's 10 questions, and then you get a score out of that. So people who have a score of 4 or higher, and that again is 1 in 6 adults, or have an increased physical risk of mental health issues, substance use, chronic diseases such as heart disease, diabetes, cancer, risky behaviors like smoking, unsafe sex, criminal activity, and they have an up to 20 years less life expectancy if you have 4 or more ACEs. So basically, it shows us not just the emotional impact of trauma at a very young age, but also how you can develop heart disease, you can develop diabetes, you can develop cancer. And this is proven on very large scales. There's data that I can pull up for this that I didn't properly prepare, but they're a great example of what I'm about to go into, which is epigenetics. So epigenetics is basically, to break it all down, genes turning on and off. So we all have DNA. Our DNA is a very fixed sequence most of the time, hopefully. And that's how we can identify people through DNA. It's a fixed, almost formula. What's weird that a lot of people don't realize is certain parts of the gene can be activated without changing the genetic code. And that's called epigenetics. So we see this in a really great example is diabetes. So diabetes, type 1 diabetes, is most of the time, I think it's almost always passed down genetically. So most people know someone in their family if they have type 1 diabetes who also has type 1 diabetes. All that to say, almost no one is born with type 1 diabetes and their insulin not working. It's usually triggered by a sickness or a trauma early in life. So one of my good friends, I think she got strep throat at age 6, and all of a sudden her insulin stopped working. Her dad had diabetes, so it made sense. But again, that gene is triggered. And so it can cause genetic changes without altering the genome itself. So it's literally like flipping a switch, turning a gene on and off. All that to say, in high-risk environments, these genes can be turned on in a way that creates early puberty, that creates psychological issues, that creates long-lasting behavior issues. And I really wanted to tie this back into the discussion between the hood and inner city areas where there's a lot of violence, where there's a lot of, maybe it's drug use, maybe it's exposure to sexual activity, versus the sheltered private school kids. And Lamont and I have talked about this a lot because we've both seen people who belong to each side. We've experienced each side in different ways. But something that a lot of people notice is when the inner city kids play the prep school boys in a sport and the difference developmentally. And this is, I'm making a sweeping statement. This is just more large scale. I'm not saying this is true in every single case, but it's super interesting that people who are born in high risk environments can develop adult-like behaviors earlier. And a lot of times when it comes to boys, masculinity norms in more violent or economically marginalized communities often promote toughness, emotional stoicism, dominance. And that can also trigger early puberty in boys. So you are not only seeing this in girls who are in troubled situations, whether it's a foster home, whether it's just an impoverished neighborhood, but you also see this happen in boys where they are developing testosterone, they're developing beards and really big muscles at much younger ages, depending on the type of environment they're exposed to. Now, why does any of this matter, right? A lot of times we blame individuals for large scale issues. That is what America loves to do. We love to say, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, get over it, work harder, right? Mm-hmm. But this kind of data paints a picture that we can't look away from because it tells us how early events and a lack of protection for children, whether the parents can protect them or not is a whole other discussion, right? A lot of people are in circumstances where they would like to provide better for their children and they just can't. And that's not their fault. That's what we should be helping them out with. That's what we should be talking to our government about. But all that to say, it makes it that much harder to get out of poverty, to get out of rough neighborhoods once you've experienced trauma in those neighborhoods. And not only that, you're also going to experience physical changes. You are going to experience higher risk of chronic disease if you're exposed to things like abuse, things like violence, things like sexual imagery, sexual attention. Lamont, I want you to jump in. What is all this saying to you? And like, I know I'm kind of all over the place because I'm so passionate about this, but kind of what are you hearing right now?
I'm hearing that a lot of circumstances out of someone's control can affect not just who they become, but literally their genetics.
Yes.
And
The way that their genes are expressed.
Mhm.
It's
I found some data to support Claire, and here's some research and evidence that a child's environment, particularly how harsh, unstable, or stressful it is, can influence the timing of puberty. Key research finds how environment affects puberty onset. Stressful environments can lead to early puberty. Psychosocial acceleration theory and related evolutionary models suggest that when a child grows up in an unpredictable and threatening environment, poverty, violence, neglect, instability, the body may biologically speed up development as an adaptive response. So, ladies and gentlemen, that means the hood, that means trailer parks, that means anywhere, wartime people, kids who live on military bases, gangs, all that can not only affect the growth, but what do you think it's doing to people's reasoning skills, their critical thinking? They're thinking they need to go to a community, which Claire hit on. The government needs to start helping build communities, which we're not doing because the government, for years, in particular Republicans, especially MAGA, have said that the whole reason why we're having these issues is because the home is absent of a dad. You fucking kidding me? Now, I'm not saying that not having that dad there can't possibly help. But if you're living in one of these communities, even having the dad there still might not fix the situation.
Right.
So
The situation is the environment.
Right. So instead of saying that as a country, we need to put policies in place that set better environments, we want to pass the buck to somebody else and say that it's just the damn dad. And that's just not the case. One thing Black communities, Claire, have had to do so long, because we've had same issues white people have, except for we tend to have less resources. And when Black dads aren't around, we call it that we raise our kids in a community, whether it be your church, your aunties, your best friends, whatever, because it takes that community to help raise that child and see that it can do the best it can to mitigate all the things we're talking about here. And before I pass it back to you, Claire, I got some more data for everybody.
Please.
So I kept digging. Father absence and family conflict. Multiple studies have shown earlier puberty in girls raised without a biological father or with high family conflict. Study examples. Ellis, which is the name of my son, by the way. Girls in high stress homes with father's absence reach puberty 7 to 10 months early, which Claire been saying 9 months this whole time. Mechanism may involve stress-induced activation of the HPA axis, affecting I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, releasing hormone GnRH, which triggers puberty. Third, socioeconomic status, SES. And we're not talking about a basketball conference. Neighborhood stress, low-income families, unsafe neighborhoods, and chronic food insecurity, food deserts, ladies and gentlemen. Study concludes, found that girls from low SES homes and high crime areas experience early breast development and menstruation, which is going to directly, and this is going to lead to the next thing we're going to cover, which is wrong. I'm not saying it's right. When you have breasts and men who are grown-ass men see this, in their mind, they're thinking that the chick is grown, unless she's got a real baby face. They don't know until they meet them and hear them talk that these are not real women. And then when they do find out they're real women, you know, they're not gonna give up the responsibility, because I always say the person who's creating the evil behavior, you can't expect them to make the right decision. And so in this situation, the environment is creating that girls are having grown women body parts, which is basically sugar attracting Black ants. Floor is back to you, Claire.
Exactly. So all of this ties back together in such I don't even have the words, an important way to every issue that Lamont and I pretty much discuss. We're talking about not just the environment, but we're talking about the physical effects. The earlier that you have puberty, the more likely you are to become pregnant. The earlier that you go through puberty, the more likely you are to be sexualized by men in your life. The earlier you're going to feel that sexualization and those eyes on you.
Mhm.
And it's
Here's a chart, Claire, I'm going to put up. You keep talking, but for those that are listening and not watching, this is a summary of everything I said, the environmental factors, plus the effect on puberty. And if you're listening, get a chance to go check out our YouTube or our TikTok so that you can see what we're saying. But Claire, continue what you were saying.
Yeah. So early puberty psychologically is also not great. Why is that? Well, we each have an internal clock, right, for when our puberty should happen. Most girls can look at the time that their mom got their period, and they should fall right around within a year of that timing, right? When you expedite that, not only are hormones released, but your neurochemistry is completely changed when you start puberty. And this is why a lot of people, when they are early in puberty, and that's why everyone's always like, oh, preteens, they're the worst. They can't, it's because your actual brain chemistry is starting to develop so rapidly in a way that the amount of hormones and chemicals that are all being rushed into your body during puberty, it's why it's so confusing. It's why it's such a distressing time. You're seeing yourself go from a child into not just seeing yourself that way, but the world seeing you as an adult, whether you are one or not. Psychologically, the world is going to start treating you more like one. And so we're not just talking about, oh, well, it causes early puberty and that's risky for pregnancy. Like, that's not only the issue here. It's also the long-term effects of early puberty mean that you're going to have high cortisol and stress, and it's triggered by high cortisol and stress, which inevitably leads to higher substance use, worse mental health issues. It can trigger a lot of underlying mental disorders that might run in families. And so it's just all of these issues compound on top of one another. Nothing is ever created in a vacuum. And some of these really small things might seem isolated. Oh, she got early puberty. Well, what neighborhood did she grow up in? What was she exposed to sexually? What are the norms around her family, around her neighborhood, around her school? And all of it creates a cocktail for basically determining in a lot of ways people's future. Because each one of these adverse childhood experiences, each trauma that adds on creates physical and emotional issues for the rest of your life. And this is why we can't keep blaming the communities who have been historically oppressed and saying, get your shit together. You know, segregation isn't an issue anymore. Get it together. It's like, no, this is the product of centuries of trauma that has been continually passed down. And we've never put these people who have been historically oppressed in a position to heal. We just keep pushing them back into similar scenarios that breed violence, that breed, I mean, everyone always talks about what's the most justified reason for stealing. You're starving. Mm-hmm. And so people will also try to blame certain communities for being criminals. Mm-hmm. And it's like, would you become a criminal, Mr. Republican Senator, if put in a similar environment?
Well, Claire, the problem with them is they weren't put in the environment, and their asses do the most white collar crime on all the face of earth.
Right. They're criminals.
They had to hand up and getting still. They get their asses fucking caught. And I watched them on American Greed on CNBC acting as if they were dialed upon, that they came from the worst circumstances, when in most times you come from middle class or upper middle class or even rich families, and you just get your ass fucking greedy because you want to be able to go to Epstein Island and molest underage girls and pop their cherries. I digress.
Literally.
Folks, we are going to get to the issues with male puberty in a second.
Yeah.
So Claire, summarize what you're saying so we can start talking about the issues dealing with male puberty advancement.
Yeah, well, it's going to relate, but yeah, in some, the Lina Medina story, and then also the way that puberty can be triggered by environment tells us that we as a society need to protect especially the people who are growing up in difficult circumstances. And like you said, trailer trash, inner city, whatever it is, the more unpredictable your environment is, especially as a young girl, the more likely you are to have teen pregnancy, to have abuse, to have early puberty, to have psychological issues, to have physical issues later in life. And so all that to say, we should be putting resources into improving these communities in a way that makes sense for them. Not because you are the rich person who's like, this is what the community needs. Ask the community what they need. Ask the people who are experiencing childhood trauma, what would make your life easier? And let's start there. Let's work with the community instead of doing this, I know what's best for you, which has created and exacerbated this issue. So pivoting to how this affects boys.
Before you go, let me finish that by saying that I am someone who is from impoverished community who tried to put programs in place for impoverished communities. And the other fight that no one talks about is how you have an establishment group of people in small communities that are nonprofits that try to serve the community that want to bicker about the money that comes down to help serve the communities. Which is another problem. I was a Black male coming into a community that was served by nonprofits of Black people, and they saw me and my wife as young threats to take their fucking money. And instead of listening to us about things they put in place that failed because we owned a child care that was in the hood, and we heard what the parents was complaining about, they did exactly what Claire said, didn't listen, put in what they thought would help the community, and now two of those businesses that they wasted almost $2 million on have failed. So it is important that you listen to what the community is saying, and then when you get someone who has made it out of the community through education, who knows what the community needs, who's working in a business service that can tell you what the community needs, don't try to isolate them out and be crabs in a barrel because you want to be the rich person. Fucking help them. Help them, because if you help them, a rising tide lifts all boats. Claire, back to you.
Exactly. And helping these communities will reduce crime. It will create more jobs. More people will be able to engage in society in a way that we would like them to if we invest in them early, if we prevent these adverse childhood experiences, if we make sure that every child has a social worker, if they need one, who is paid well and who knows what they're doing. So all that to say, I would like to pivot, and I can't talk about this in boys without talking about porn.
I got a clip for you before you go, because Claire's about to drop some more knowledge on y'all. I got a clip from someone who normally most years I disagree with everything this bitch says, but now as of 2025, she is starting to make a lot of sense, and she has something to say about porn with young men. And ladies and gentlemen, there are studies that suggest this, and men need some help. Take a look at this.
It's really shocking to see how many men write it and talk about like porn addiction, and they keep saying that no man, like not many men will talk about it, and it's something that so many men are struggling from. And like my husband doesn't have any social media because he said to me, which I didn't even think about it, he's like, it's all pornography. And I'm so conscious of it now, but when he said it at the time, I didn't even, that's what I'm talking about. So you turn on Instagram and it's just butt cheeks. Like, you just got Kim Kardashian full frontal, like a tiny little sliver covering her crotch area. So, and men are biologically wired to respond to that. So,
first of all, can't stand that bitch. Secondly, broken clocks twice, right twice a day. So, you know, she's onto something here. And it has been studied. So I'm going to drop some of that. These are facts. So a Taiwanese longitudinal study linked early exposure to sexually explicit media at about age 13 with earlier sexual debut, so earlier losing your virginity, more sexual partners, and riskier sexual behaviors. Not super wild, but it is scientifically backed. Psychology Today reviewed studies showing early exposure to sexual content via TV, movies, and internet. And it said it correlates with earlier sexual initiation, riskier sex, and more permissive attitudes in adolescence, which is interesting.
So Claire, as you're saying about social media and what she said, the only things I usually watch on Instagram are political and fitness content.
Right.
But I clicked up there to substantiate what she's saying, and look at what they're pushing to me as suggested reels. Look at this shit.
Yep.
This girl ain't even wearing a bra. And look
It's
at this
all
girl.
sexual.
Yes.
Sex sells. Sex sells.
Yes. And
They've
Dr.
known this.
Umar, for white people that don't know, Dr. Umar is this, I don't even want to say he's
EL
controversial.
doctor.
He's a black He's a black guy who's a PhD doctor who's always saying black men shouldn't sleep with white women. He calls them snow bunnies. Of course, y'all know I believe if you love is love. If you find love, no matter what the race is, go for it.
Right.
But look at this thing right here. There's not hardly any man that wouldn't look at her and want to get with her. And then you've got this right here. Now, I can already tell you what you're going to hear from this, Claire. You're going to hear the Bible thumping men saying that some of the responsibility bears on the women to cover their shit up and stop trying to sexualize men. And I think that for this debate, there is some weight to that, because if these women, either way you look at it, even if these women are fully clothed, a man will still want to try to have sex with them, even fully clothed, if they've got that certain shape. However, when you take a shrimp or a crab out of its shell, you definitely going to eat that shit. And this is exactly what you got right here. You got the lobster meat out of the shell, and it's going to get eaten. Floor's back to you.
Yeah, I think it's a really difficult topic for me to tackle, the whole modesty debate, this ain't about that per se. It's more about what your studies and what, but just saying this is something we can definitely dive into this because it's so pertinent. I'm personally someone who dresses more modestly. That being said, that is because I don't want to be any more sexualized than I already am. So that is not who I want to be known for. That's not to say I'm ashamed by my sexuality or just act like it's not there. But that's to say that I want to be taken seriously. And I know that a lot of people tune out the second that they're seeing some boobs in their face or a certain outfit. And I know that that sounds bad because we want to empower women to wear what they want. That being said, what we wear does matter, and it's just tough. But going more into the extremes of it, which I can be much more definitive about my stance on. Porn is the most extreme example of this. You're completely butt-ass naked, and you're doing things that we're not going to see on the street. So the short-term effects of porn, and this is from studies. So if you're, and then I just want you all to imagine you're a 12-year-old boy, okay? And these are the effects that you're seeing. Increased arousal and mood elevation, so high dopamine release, temporary stress or anxiety relief, distorted expectations, and this is huge, around sex, intimacy, and relationships, especially in adolescence. And then reduced sensitivity to real-world cues of attraction or emotional intimacy. And so those are short-term, right? You just started watching it. Long-term, complete desensitization to sexual stimuli. So I'll get into this in a second. Diminished satisfaction with real-life sexual partners. Get it up. Performance anxiety or ED, erectile dysfunction, especially in younger men. And this can be called, it's literally coined porn-induced ED. Social withdrawal or emotional numbing, so substance use, and then increased loneliness and shame, particularly if porn consumption conflicts with personal or moral values. So all that to say, pornography's psychological impact on people, especially when viewing it on a regular basis, it hijacks the dopamine-driven reward pathway. This happens with any addiction. Dopamine is the main culprit in almost every addiction. But each novel sexual image is a dopamine spike. And by novel, yes, we mean new. So what does this create? Over time, the brain becomes less sensitive to the same stimulus. You develop a tolerance. So when you're 10, you might see that image that we just saw and you get real excited. But let's say you've been watching hardcore pornography, that image isn't going to do shit for you anymore. It's going to be like you're looking at a tree. It doesn't do anything. And so this leads to escalating use and more extreme consumption, because what used to just be your standard male, female, one person porn isn't doing it for you anymore. So maybe you need it to be a gangbang. Maybe
Fetish.
to be
It becomes a fetish.
And weird. And it needs to be something that before you started watching was off limits. And now children. And that's why you see all over the porn sites, barely legal.
Yep.
Teen is everywhere. And when they say teen, that means that this actress has to be 18 or 19, which is still fucked up. But this is called, there's a name for it, the Coolidge effect. So it's the tendency for sexual novelty, new sexual imagery, to increase arousal more than familiarity. So unlike real sex or traditional erotica, and by that I mean like Playboy magazines, online porn offers endless novelty with minimal effort. Let me say that again. Endless novelty with minimal effort. So there is pretty much no limit to the extremity that you can experience. So if you're getting numb to this thing, jump to the next. And once that becomes boring, jump to the next. And all of a sudden you're watching hardcore violent sex because that's the only thing that can get your brain to get excited anymore. What does that do? It means that in actual sexual relationships, men might have issues with getting it up because this is not violent. This is not insane. This is not eye-catching clickbait, fucked up family, whatever crazy shit that porn is pushing out. This is just me and some girl. And then it also creates a need for more violence, more fetishes, more weirdness in order for you to even enjoy that sexual experience. So over time, porn consumption can shape attitudes towards sex, consent, and empathy, if not counterbalanced by healthy relationships, ethical frameworks, and proper sexual education. So if we're not giving sexual education at an early enough age, and most boys, I need to pull up statistics on this, but most boys are exposed or watch porn for the first time at an age that we would not believe. It is very young. And so
for a lot of boys, porn to a kid who hasn't seen porn before, just watching a TV show and you see a woman's breast and nipples, that literally is like porn for a kid.
Right, because it's so new and it's nothing you've ever seen before. And it's also why a lot of men try to control women's clothes and modesty. Because and this is why people will get all crazy about breastfeeding in public. You know why? It's because it's not as exciting if you see nipples everywhere. If men are just seeing boobs out in public doing what boobs are supposed to do, which is feed children, then I'm not going to get as excited when a woman takes off her shirt because I've seen it everywhere. And it's the novelty experience. So it's also why in a lot of very, very misogynistic and patriarchal cultures, especially in, and I'm not trying to isolate religion in this, but in a lot of Islamic cultures, why are they wanting their wives fully covered? It's because it's that much more exciting when I'm the only one who can see her take it all off.
Well, we know America is never going to go to that. So,
no, but it's debates over like modest is hottest or whatever. It's a big thing in the conservative realm right now. A lot of conservative women are like, I'm dressing modest because that's what boys would want and blah, blah, blah. A lot of those guys are promoting modesty, I think, in my opinion, because it makes sex that much more exciting if you're not seeing it on the streets. and all the women in your life are modest, and then all of a sudden you are seeing it, it's that same novelty experience. It's new, it's different. Versus if women are out walking around showing it all off, it's like, leave a little to the imagination. That quote in and of itself.
I have a hard time believing that about those men, Claire, because all they got to do is go on social media or to the gym. I mean, literally, when we're done, I'm going to the gym. And I can tell you right now, the one in the middle, I will definitely see that. And this one right here, I'm going to see a bunch of them. And so, and a lot of those men that exclaim this stuff, you see them in the gym wearing these hats and these fake ass flags, even though the flag is not supposed to be made in vain, technically. But anyway, you'll see them haggling these women. And maybe it's not haggling, because I don't want to say it like that, because from what I've seen, they've been nice to the women. Or talk to them, but you'll see them in the faces of these women wearing this type of stuff, but are online telling people to keep it covered up.
Well, now, it's they don't see those. I don't think that those kinds of men, and the men, and by these kinds of men, I mean the men that I don't like, the men that I don't want to associate with in this society, the men who see women as objects. It's not that they see their wife who's modest as less of an object. She's just a more coveted object. So it's like pennies. I know this sounds, I can't make analogies about women because it's awful, but this is how these men tend to see it. They see someone like a sex worker as an object. They're like, oh, she's making money off her body.
Right.
But she now is worth less to me because she is only making money off her body. Whereas my wife, I still control her. She's a stay-at-home wife. She doesn't have any of her own money. She's beautiful, but I want her to be modest because I don't want any other man to enjoy her. I want her to be my object.
So it comes down to control for those men.
That's what I've figured out, because they love to consume the nasty, dirty shit. But then in their own personal lives, the women that they hold highly, their mothers, their wives, their daughters, they preach, cover yourself up. Right. Don't be a slut. And it's because
that's what I was trying to get you to. That's exactly what I was trying to get you to.
The sluts who are putting everything out there. And they also don't respect the other women in their life. But in order to make those women a little bit more respectable, they want them to cover up. They want them to be theirs. They want to control how their sexuality is expressed.
So yeah, they can control those women in the home. But if you're dealing with a woman like this, who you can't control what she's wearing, then you're going to always be hit in your mind with jealousy, because you know that other men see this and other men are going to be trying to holler at this woman. And so if they could control these big booty women, they would if they could, but they can't, and that scares them.
Right. And there's a lot of big booty women who, no matter what they wear, something's going to show. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, there's definitely women who are trying to not make their boobs the center of look, but every shirt shows their boobs. And so for those women, I say, I'm sorry that the patriarchy has put us in this position. But all that to say, men should not be the ones having these main conversations about what is and isn't right for a woman to wear. If we want to talk about it from an intellectual standpoint, like we are right now, then I'm down for that. But men just conflating what a woman's wearing with exactly who she is sexually, who she is in a relationship, and making all these crazy assumptions based on one outfit, and also assuming that because she's wearing less clothing, she wants it and she wants to be harassed. That's not fair. That's when it becomes, okay, so you're using clothing as a justification for treating someone badly or harming them. That's never okay. But at the same time, we do have to acknowledge the messages that we put out when we do dress a certain way. But all that to say, back to the porn stuff, there are, and I've talked about this, it is scary, the amount of men that I have met and been around the past couple years who I think have been radicalized, whether it's by the porn industry or even just reels, like you said, Instagram, TikTok. It doesn't even have to be going on to a porn website. It can be on anybody's page. It could be an 8-year-old and they're getting these images. It desensitizes their brain. It creates a very specific image of women that is not real. And then it causes issues in your everyday life. And I have said this a million times. some of the worst experiences I have ever had with men were in early high school. And I believe fully that it's because they weren't given proper sexual education about what loving, caring sex was. They were probably given don't have sex by their parents. And then 2, the ways that they did learn about it when they were nervous about, oh, I'm going to go see this girl that I have a crush on this weekend and I want to kiss her. Where are they going? Where are they getting their information on what sex or kissing or any of that looks like? Media.
Yep.
Media, and then potentially porn, which is even more extreme, an extreme version of the common media that we're seeing, like the photos you've shown. So to me, how do we respond to all these issues that I brought up? We need to increase sex education and make it very, very standardized, make it so that everyone by the age that they're getting introduced to sexual stuff, whether it's online or in person, that they know. It's also going to prevent sexual abuse, because if people can also put words to what body parts are and what abuse is, then they're much more likely to report it. They're much more likely to know what's going on if someone starts to initiate that. So a lot of this does come down to, how do we educate children at the right age on stuff that is going to be necessary to know without making it inappropriate. It's a hard line, but you have to make it about the education and not about the eroticism and the fascination with it. You have to make it much more, this is what biologically happens. This is what loving, caring affection looks like, and really lay it down. Because if these boys are only getting that information from very violent, very sensationalist sources, then it's going to translate into their relationships, and they might end up harming women and not even realizing that they're doing it, because that's what they've learned. They thought women wanted to be choked. They thought women wanted to be spanked or slapped. And then there's a young girl in this situation who maybe didn't ever consume porn, or maybe not as extreme, or maybe is just confused. And she's being treated like an object because that's what this boy has observed. And so it perpetuates sexual assault. It perpetuates relationship violence. And then it also will lead later to more serious things in your 20s, 30s, 40s. If you haven't worked through these issues that happen usually in your tweens, early teens, that age range.
So these things all happened to me. Now I'm 45. I had sex education the same year I had DARE, which was the anti-drug thing. Yep. So I was about 10 years old. So that would put me around 1990. And the sex education I got was more so of, don't do it because you'll get this result. And it was a whole lot of either the woman's going to get pregnant or the man is going to get an STD. And the damn video they showed me scared the fuck out of me for having sex, because they showed a penis that looked like a damn daffodil. It looked like a dandelion. It literally was infected and had things around the head of the penis. And for the longest time, I was scared as hell to have sex. I didn't have a father in my home. I'm an only child, so I didn't have a big brother. I didn't have an uncle to talk to it about it. My mom and them wasn't talking to me about it.
Right.
And so when it came time for me to have sex in 10th grade with this girl who really cared about me, I was scared to have sex with her. As a matter of fact, I thought that if I nutted near her, she might get pregnant, because sex education, instead of just kind of giving me the education to understand sex, not to per se have it, but to really and truly understand it, it scared me. And literally that girl took it from me, and I had no practice in how to, properly treat her. She was the guiding stick because she had already messed around before 10th grade. And so you have to, as a man, I think it's important that maybe part of the sex education is you have some kind of man that can come in and talk to boys, and you have a woman who can come in and talk to girls, so that you can individualize the different things you're going to go through from a man. Because men, you're told, or you look at TV and porn and you hear if your penis isn't 12 inches, no one is going to want you. Then you've got like the whole Minuteman situation, which pretty much every boy in high school at first is going to be that, unless you've been getting it in way earlier than what you should. And no one is there to help guide you through these things if you don't have men in your community that can break these things down and make you feel comfortable talking about them.
Right. And it also leads into a lot of women being unsatisfied because most porn is set up for the male gaze. Pause. So I've touched on this before, but the male gaze versus the female gaze, most of the consumers of porn statistically are men. Women do consume some porn, but most women that I talk to, they like to read their porn.
Romantic novels.
It's romantic. It's about the journey. It's about the storyline. And I think the way that the porn industry has marketed itself towards men is by acknowledging that for a lot of men, it's about fast, quick, exciting, and not about building. And that's what a lot of women want. And so all that to say, if you're a man who's only ever consumed porn as your example of what sex looks like, you're also going to have a lot of women who are very, very undersatisfied because they're with someone who's only worried about, I'm sorry for the language, getting their nut. Mm-hmm. And a lot of women recognize that at a certain age. Oh, wow, this isn't really about me. This is like whether I reach that point isn't necessarily a concern in this moment. It's about him right now.
Well, thankfully, I was with someone who was willing to teach, but a lot of women don't find it to be their responsibility to teach someone.
I mean,
look, if you're trying to date someone long term, you have to deal with their securities. Now, if this is just a wham bam, thank you, ma'am, then no. But if either person in a relationship cares about the other person for long-term purposes and people have insecurities or quote unquote flaws, it does become the responsibility to mention whatever the flaw is and then to try to work on it. And so thankfully, I had someone who not only sadly had experience by the 10th grade, but was also willing to teach me. And it was a whole lot of what you just said, kind of romantic, erotic, take your time, take deep breaths, that type of thing. And so I had to learn, quote unquote, my stroke game from a woman.
Right. And it's just, and a lot of women aren't going to be at that level. So how that might have gone down, you might not have. I just think a lot of boys don't even know what they're doing and they might actually be causing harm.
Yeah.
And that's scary and that's sad because in that situation, in this hypothetical where a boy doesn't know any better, a girl doesn't know any better, he's just going to do moves that he's seen in porn. The girl ends up feeling disrespected and uncomfortable, but she doesn't know how to express it because this is also her first time doing anything. And then it creates a situation where the boy feels bad because clearly the girl wasn't happy. And then the girl feels bad because she's like, what the hell was that? That's not what I thought love making was. That's not what I thought intimacy was about. So to me, it really just comes down to we need to be super mindful of the messages that we send, especially to boys, but also to girls. And then the serious effects of pornography consumption and the desensitization to sex and sexual imagery. We need to address somehow on a societal level because at its most extreme, this desensitization can contribute to very, very harmful attitudes and behaviors, such as sexual assault, the R word, even domestic violence can come out of this because you're creating an echo chamber in which someone will never be fulfilled unless there's something more exotic, erratic, erotic coming their way. And then in a normal, healthy relationship, that's not going to be reality. You're going to have a much more stable situation. You're not going to have constantly new material bombarded in your face. You're going to have the same person there every single day. So it's also probably contributing to the discord that we are seeing between men and women right now, and the male loneliness epidemic and all of that stuff. I think that if those boys maybe had been educated differently on how to interact with a woman in an intimate space, there might not be as many men who are miserable and alone and addicted to porn.
So to that regard, I got to pause you on that one, because I read a study that was taken on a lot of like the kind of it was taken on apps and websites that are supposed to be bringing men and women together for relationships. So you had Tinder, you had Plenty of Fish, you had another one of those swipe left, swipe rights.
Yeah.
You had all these different websites, and they polled them. And guess what? 10% of the men on these websites was having sex with about 80% of all the women. Now, as much as this is an issue for men, women have got to address, okay, because think about what 10% of the men was getting all those women. It probably wasn't the nicest guys. No. Some of those guys, they either had one or two things: a lot of money, or a good body, or both, or both. And if 10% of the men is having sex with 80% of the women, that also says that there needs to be some education put in place on the woman's side about what she's tolerating from me.
What she deserves. But it's tough because a lot of women are lonely right now because they're unwilling to lower their standards just to receive intimacy. And I think there's also something to be said about how a lot of women's platonic friendships involve intimacy and a lot of men's don't. So I think also a lot of men expect sex and relationships to be the one place that they're nurtured and that they're able to be vulnerable. And I think a lot of women right now who aren't necessarily sexually active or don't have a boyfriend or whatever might not feel as lonely because a lot of our friendships are intimate. Even if it's not physically, we get that emotional intimacy with them. And I would see it when I dated guys. It was like all of a sudden I'm their therapist. I am their like nurturer kind of mother figure. And I'm also their sexual partner, which is a lot to put on women. So I think there also needs to be something culturally that happens where men don't feel like the only space that they can be vulnerable and be kind of emotional is in the bedroom or in a relationship. I think that's also a part of this, that sex isn't just a physical thing. It's also an emotional thing. And if you numb yourself to that, it's going to create issues in your personal relationships in your life. So
that's another issue that goes back to men and sex. Now, ladies and gentlemen, my degree is not in psychology, but my mentor is a psychologist, and I've had to sit with her and talk about a lot of this stuff. So if I'm telling you that the study from these dating apps said 10% of the men are screwing 80% of the women. So basically, is that meaning that 80% of the women are just up there to get their rocks off and not looking for anything long term? Is that what that's suggesting?
I don't know about
then
that.
The other point, before you go, and then the other point about something you just said about like how women have that relationship with other women that can kind of satisfy some of the intimate moments, and that it probably shouldn't be the responsibility of a woman who's dating a man to, you know, kind of be his everything. I disagree with that if you're dating that person long term. And the reason I disagree with that is because psychology books say that before a man can legitimately, for the average woman, have sex with said woman, he's got to create an emotional bond with that woman first. But the psychology books also say that most women don't get that emotional bond with the man until after the man has had sex with the woman. Now, these are not my statistics. These are what the psychology and the studies say. So how do you bridge that gap when the man is not getting intimacy anywhere else? You girls are getting it, and you're getting healthy relationships from your friend. And then as a man, we don't want to be quote unquote intimate or know how to reveal our intimate side until we smash. So then how do you all of a sudden separate if you want a working relationship to grow? Somebody's got to be the bigger adult in that situation for the growth of the relationship. And it seems like that is going to usually be the woman.
But I do think it's just an unfair assumption because men are capable of those deep emotions. It's just that we socialize them to be uncomfortable with it and to avoid vulnerability. And then it becomes the task of a 20-some-year-old woman to educate a 20-some-year-old, 30-some-year-old, however old man, or emotionally caretake when the woman is not getting that caretaking in return. And especially if you're a woman and you're getting that emotional caretaking from your friends, then this man is taking emotional work out of you and then not refilling your cup. So I think that's also why a lot of women are like, why am I doing this? Just for the sex? Just for the sex alone? Because that's what they've got vibrators for. You know what I'm saying? Like, if they want a partnership, they also want someone who's going to at least try to emotionally show up. And I think that the expectation has become that the woman is going to know everything that there is to know and handle the emotional side, encourage him to cry, encourage him to be vulnerable, all those things, when I think that work should have already been done.
That's the problem with relationships. I mean, nobody comes to the table perfect.
Right.
And if you're going to be willing to be with someone, you've got to figure out exactly what it is about them you're willing to accept and work with and what you're willing to accept and escape. And so for probably that other 90% of men, let's just say that they don't have the money, the penis, or this emotional connection. Well, what about the guys who do have that connection, that can tap into their emotional side, but the women aren't looking at them because they want the person who can't do that, but is putting out good in bed or has all the money. And you're overlooking the 90% of men who might come to the table connected, emotionally connected, who can have a good conversation with you, but might not look the best, might be fat, might be overly skinny, might be a teacher, might be a pre-K teacher, whatever the case may be. They might work jobs that enhance their ability to be emotionally vulnerable and emotionally mature, but they get looked over.
Well, and I think that that's not an isolated thing to men or women. I think that women's appearance has been scrutinized since media was existed, and some of the biggest money generators in our economy are cosmetics and
definitely
women's BBLs, face, all of that shit. The whole cosmetic industry is designed so that women can look their best. And then a lot of men are like, what? Just because I'm, out of shape, none of these women want to touch me. And it's like, well, what have those women put into their appearance in the last 10 years? Are you putting that much in yourself? Are those women financially set? I mean, a lot of men act like every woman in the world only ever wants a rich man, but women have the ability to make their own money now. So I think a lot of women, it's just about, do you make as much as I do or more? And men don't want to deal with that, I guess, or it makes them feel uncomfortable. So I don't necessarily think that there's women who are like, his dick isn't big enough, or he's not hot enough, or he doesn't make enough. I think it's more so we have more power now and more freedom. And so we are truly only going to consider someone if they contribute to our life.
But that's not what the data on those websites are saying. They're saying y'all are going to the dirt bags. Y'all, well, at the very least, they're saying you're sleeping with the dirt bags. Okay.
I mean, so attraction is important for sure.
Maybe not long term, but at the very least,
are those men making it clear that they're sleeping with multiple women, or are they telling all those women you're the main person, and these girls are thinking that they found the one, and the same guy's sleeping with 80% of the website because he's lying? Because I don't think girls are going to dating apps to fuck. I think that girls are going to
I would like to think not either, honestly.
And I think that if anyone's going to fuck, it's usually, in my experience, the guy. Like, they're waiting for this conversation to get over with so that we can go. Do you want to go back to my place? These are large scale sweeping development. So I would need to look more into the data, but I'm just speaking on personal experience.
Mhm.
I don't think that women are that particular about these things that men keep shouting in my comments. Well, 6'6", 6 inches, 6 figures, 6 feet. Like everyone's saying that shit. The only people I've ever heard refer to that are other men.
You've got MAGA in your comment section.
Well, and I've never ever heard a woman that I know who was considering a guy go, yeah, he's great, but he doesn't make 6 figures, or he's under 6 inches, or like, I've never heard women use that. I feel like that's just like an easy cop out for men to be like, oh, well, I don't have all 6 of, I don't have all 3 of them.
But see, I have heard women use that throughout my 45 years of life. It's maybe not all 3, but at least one of the 3 is a no-go for them. I've heard women say that, and I can literally pull up women on apps who say that on their TikToks, on their Instagrams, and all that stuff, which is probably some of those women that are saying I've got all these high-fluting rules and are the ones giving it up in that poll where 10% of the men were sleeping with 80% of the women.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to look in the data. I don't necessarily feel confident in just using like my own personal experience and my conversations with other women and men in my life. But I will say that I think what's difficult about this conversation is that a lot of men are feeling like they're being scrutinized for everything that they do. Oh, I don't make enough money. Oh, I'm not tall enough. Oh, I'm not, blah, blah, blah. Any of that scrutiny, let's say that it's coming down to 3 things. Women are also experiencing that scrutiny. So it's like we're all being scrutinized by the other gender. Women, whether it's their boobs are too small, whether it's they weigh too much, whether it's any number of things can also be put back onto the women. But all that to say, I would need to look more into the data on this and really see what's going on a large scale. My own experience has made me feel like these men are just complaining over everything that they can in order to avoid emotional regulation, or at least understanding what women are expecting emotionally. Because to me, those conversations and those defensive arguments like, well, I'm not 6 feet tall, no woman will ever date me, that always comes as a response to me saying, why aren't you emotionally invested in a relationship? Why aren't you listening to the grievances that women are bringing up and why they're not dating? And it's always like, well, women don't like me because I'm not 6 feet tall. And it's like, whoa, no, that's not what I'm saying here. I'm saying, regardless of the 6 foot thing, are you doing everything else to make women feel comfortable? Are you doing everything else that you can to not make up for the fact that you have something that you're insecure about, but yeah, like make up for it? Women do it too. If we have something that we're insecure about, we try to invest in other parts of ourselves so that we're more appealing. And then what I hear from a lot of men is just like, well, I'm not appealing. Fuck you guys. And it's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying work on the stuff that you can. There's obviously things that some of us just can't control. But what most women, I think, in my experience, are looking for is love and care. And I'm not sure that a lot of men even just know how to give that, especially if they're young, especially if they're in their early or mid-20s. I think that they might just be looking for more of the physical side. But again, I'm generalizing. I do not have statistics here. I'm just thinking based on experience and based on conversations I've heard. But yeah, it's complicated. It's complicated for sure.
We'll have to, ladies and gentlemen, we'll have to do a part 2 to this conversation. It's been a great conversation. I've got to get ready to bounce, by the way. I would like to say that let us know how you feel about this. There is a whole hotline in the description of this video where you can leave us voicemails and we can read them and maybe make some more content around this issue. In parting words, ladies and gentlemen, me and Claire will be back tomorrow to discuss politics with a young on the rise TikToker who's very similar to Claire, who's young and on the rise, making big waves in TikTok. Any videos you're going to put out today, Claire, that people should come and look at?
TBD. I hadn't planned on one because I was going to chop this video up, but TBD. Keep on the lookout. I have some drafts that have been asking me to post them, and we'll see if I want to dip into the drafts. But yeah, and I want to close with this, with saying, like, this is a very sensitive topic, and we are kind of speaking on our feet. So I don't want anything said in here to be pulled completely out of context. I want us to understand that the goal of this conversation is to bring people closer together. I'm definitely not someone who wants to just sit here and bitch and moan about the current state of affairs between men and women. I'm doing this so that we can hopefully get better understanding of how we can meet in the middle, how we can understand our differences and not make them something that divide us, but something that we can grow through and figure out each other better. And also a big message from this is protect your children. And we need legislation that protects them and make sure that they are not getting exposed to things that they are not ready for. Because we did explain very well in this video the real impacts of that exposure and how it can lead to much more severe things later in life. So all in all, I know it's a sensitive topic, but if you're still listening, thank you so much for hanging out with us. And we will definitely bring more conversations like this. If people are interested, we would love to expand on it. But yeah, we're both just kind of thinking on our feet and trying to relate as best we can. So yeah.
The beauty of this connection between me and Claire, she brings her youthful buoyance to the conversation, the kind of almost Snow White optimism about the conversation. I bring that grizzled old 45-year-old experience. And I can just tell you right now, she was way too nice to you MFers, because she wanted to preface it and say, don't take things out of context. And I'm just here to tell her, from someone who's been doing social media for so long, it doesn't matter. They are going to take things out of context. But what does matter is that those who hear your full conversation will understand
where we're coming from.
Yes, they will understand that. And for those that get in your comment section and are making stupid comments, the best thing you can do is tell them, listen to the whole thing if you want to understand what I'm saying without going into context. And that's what we'll say to you guys in closing. Come back. She's going to chop up this video. You can find it on her channel. You can find it on the ClaireMont TikTok. It's going up on the podcast in about an hour. It's already on the ClaireMont YouTube. Don't forget to like the video, comment, subscribe, share, and we'll see you guys noon tomorrow.
See you then.